So I was just speaking with Mehak backstage, and she was asking me, aren't you feeling cold? What do you guys think? Am I feeling cold? Do I look like I'm feeling cold? I mean, I've climbed Everest a couple of times. I've climbed Denali. I've climbed some of the toughest and tallest mountains in the world. Actually, you'll be very surprised. I'm actually feeling cold right now. I'm quite underdressed for gender. I realized, once I kind of came here. But so I'm going to start by kind of sharing this picture. In June, on June 3rd, 2022, I reached the tallest mountain of North America. The mountain's name is Denali. But when I signed up for this mountain, I actually thought it was going to be a walk in the park. As I just said, I've climbed Everest twice. I thought, man, I'm going to kill this mountain. This is going to be super awesome. Like, how hard can it be at the end of the day? But as soon as I landed in Denali, I realized that it was hiked up a massive snow, ice, rock stairmaster, sprinkled with a lot of altitude sickness, blistered toes, and a whole bunch of things that I'm going to talk about. And it was an experience of a lifetime, to be honest. In this picture, you see all of us are smiling and happy and enjoying. But behind these smiling faces, there was a lot of suffering and misery. And all of it started on day one itself. I still remember rigging my sled, rigging my backpack, and then our guide, Dan, weighed everything, and he said, Kuntal, your stuff is about 55 kilos. I'm like, okay. I've never, hauled 55 kilos in my life, but it's just a flat walk, 8 kilometers, how hard can it be? Again, this constant mindset that it's super easy, I'll do it. And then I started hauling the gear on the glacier, and for the next 6 hours as I walked through the Kahitna glacier, it was nothing short of torture. I have to be very honest here. And the moment we reached the campsite, I wanted to drop my load. No, I'm not talking about the one on my back. I actually had to badly use the toilet. And the guide said that, guys, we have to kind of create this platform, our tent site. I'm like, man, I need to go, but okay, let's wait, let's keep it, hold it in, and I'm going to build the campsite. So we're all doing a happy dance. Nice happy dance, flattening the campsite. I would say probably the size, like half the size of this room was our campsite. So we kind of, spent an hour going over it, flattening it, and pitching our tents, and I'm like, great, now I can go. And then my guide said that, but we have to create a 6 feet deep hole. Then we have to cut snow bricks, and you have to line the snow bricks, and then you can go inside that. Like that. Okay, I don't know how long I can hold it in. So we started, creating this deep hole and everything, kind of finished it. And just about by the time everything was ready, I swear, my poop had literally taken a U-turn inside my body. And it stayed put for the rest of the night. And then I went inside my tent, and I lay inside my tent. Every single body part was aching. I didn't even realize that I had certain muscles in my body. Like my quad, my hamstring, my glutes, everything was paining. I couldn't think beyond the pain at all. And I was like, why am I doing this? Am I mad? Why all this suffering, misery? It's just day one. I'm not even liking anything. The walk was boring. And all of this stuff is going on. And then I remembered this statement that my maternal aunt had asked me once. Kuntal, why would you pay money to torture yourself, get cold, get hungry, get tired, and then go and poop in a bucket? Wouldn't you rather be just in Switzerland on a luxurious vacation or something after spending all this money? I was like, maybe she was right, man. So, think that evening, I was so overwhelmed in the tent that I was, for the first time in a decade, I felt like giving up actually. Like, let's just go home. And as I was going through this emotional stuff, next to me was my tent mate, his name was Nick, and I looked at Nick, and I shared with him my state of mind. And what Nick said next was, Kuntal, it's just one day. Take a rain check this evening. Tomorrow is going to be a brand new day. Let's see what happens tomorrow. And it is so surprising. I have said these words for my entire 10 years of climbing career to other climbers. And to find myself in the place to hear these words, sometimes, you preach something but you don't practice and you do need some reinforcement. And I got that reinforcement. I slept the night. Next morning I woke up. One thing I promised myself. I'm almost running away at the first sense of discomfort. This makes no sense to someone who has climbed Everest twice. I can't be running away. I promised myself that I was going to give it the best I had. And let's see what happens. So, Denali was a very first time kind of an experience for not only I was on the mountain for the first time, but there is a very peculiar thing that you do on Denali for the very first few days. It's called snowshoeing. You can go look it up on the internet what snowshoeing means. I'm not going to go into details of it. But snowshoeing is not very complicated, but the way your feet move inside your boots and on the snowshoes, in the first 2 days, I ended up developing about 7 blisters on my feet. This is like literally the first time I was doing any of this. And the biggest blister, which was on my right Achilles tendon, was almost the size of a ping pong ball. Imagine like this bigger blister. For the next 13-14 days as I climbed Denali, every time I put my steps ahead, every time I walked, it felt as if someone was shooting bullets through my feet. I cannot even express in words what level of pain I was going through at that point. But sometimes when life gives you lemons, I say make some lemonade out of it. And so in my case, that meant taking all this pain from the blisters, mixing it up with all the soreness from all the body parts of, hauling all this gear and making a nice, delicious pain cocktail. Or maybe I should say mocktail because I don't drink really. So all of this stuff, we went through all this suffering, misery, and then finally, I was standing on top of Denali on June 3rd. And you can still see me smiling. I had a big smile on my face, but honestly speaking, the blister was in a very bad condition. And all this pain, but when you accomplish something that you have dreamt of all your life, all that pain kind of, just starts fading away. But then I came back home, and for the next month, I was walking like a robot, literally like this. I could not wear any kind of shoes. I was actually wearing chappals all the time. I was not wearing anything in my feet. It was like really tough. And then I again started questioning myself, why climb? Why do these things at all? I mean, why? So this question is a quintessential question that a lot of us climbers are faced with all through our life. And I'm going to quote George Mallory, one of the pioneers of Everest climbing. He attempted climbing Everest 19, 20, 21, 24, ended up dying on the mountain. But he was asked, why climb Everest? And his very famous answer was, because it is there. But talking of Everest, I want to share a story from my Everest from 2016. This was May 18th, and after about 45 days of climbing, we had reached 8,000 meters, Camp 4, which is also known as the death zone. Now, we had just entered our tents. We were 4 of us in the tent. And I remember at about 7:30, the zipper of the tent opened, and Mingma Tenji Sherpa, my Sherpa, peeked in and said, guys, get ready. We are going to climb to the summit of Mount Everest. And right before the talk, I was feeling a little nervous, but on that evening of Everest, when I saw Mingma's face, my heart was like, I was like, man, finally that moment that I've worked for my entire existence is, almost here now. And at 9:30, Mingma and I started taking our first steps towards climbing to the top of Everest. And you may say, 7:30, 9:30, 2 hours, what is this guy doing in 2 hours? It's not like I'm putting some makeup or anything on. But to just put your shoes on, to put your socks on, to put your jackets on, to set up your oxygen system, it's so difficult out there that the most basic task that could just take 15, 20 seconds can take 15, 20, 30 minutes out there in oxygen deprived environment. So as we finished everything and we got together and Mingma and I started walking, For the first 2 hours, we were walking in pitch darkness. It's so dark that if I put my hand in front of me, I can't even see my hand if I turn off my headlamp. So we were walking, and then in the distance, I could see this headlamp which was just stationary. It was not moving. And I was like, what's going on? So I slowly got towards the headlamp after about half an hour or so. And I realized that it was my very dear friend and my teammate. And he was just sitting there. And I asked, what happened? He's like, I can't walk. His Sherpa was also there and they were debating what they should do. And I'm like, look, you have put in all your life's effort. Now you are like this close to the top. Let's keep moving. And so he got up and he took 2 steps and he just fell down. And we were like, no, look, you need to turn around now. That guy luckily made a smart choice of turning around. He had an infection in his kidney that was diagnosed. He was put in the ICU for 3-4 days. Luckily, he survived. But if he would have made a trip to the top of Everest, he would probably just be buried up there, not make it back home. But we continued our journey through the night, got stuck in a couple of traffic jams. Yes, there are traffic jams on Everest, and I'm pretty sure all of you have heard about it. So we kind of worked through it, and then finally I was below what is called the Hillary Step. The famous 40 feet rock wall that Hillary climbed back then. As soon as I got on top of the step, in my heart and in my mind, I knew that I was going to stand on top of Everest within minutes now, or any time. And as I started taking last steps towards the top of Everest, for whatever reason, tears started just flowing down my eyes. I just could not control my tears. They just were flowing in copious amounts. And as soon as I reached the top of Everest, a lot of people asked me, what was going on in your mind? I have to tell you, the very first thing was a sense of deep gratitude towards the mountain. Like the very first thing I said was, thank you, mountain, thank you, Everest, for letting me stand on top of the world. And then it was my Sherpa Mingma Tenzin. I hugged him tightly. Without his support, without his guidance, I would have never made it to the top. And then I had a satellite phone. So I made a phone call to my dad. Unfortunately, a decade plus ago, my dad was diagnosed with a disease called Lewy body dementia, and he had forgotten that I was his son. But to me, telling him that I have achieved the biggest dream of my life was super important. So I called him, and I remember my wife picked up the phone, and I was like, I'm on top of the world! And there was so much wind that he was like, what are you saying? Oh man. Let's try again. And I shouted again, I'm on top of the world. And finally, they heard it and sat down and soaked in an absolutely spectacular view. I have to tell you, the view from top of Everest is absolutely magical. Magical to a point that it makes it all worth it. Speaking to my father was definitely priceless, and sharing that moment and the hug with Mingma definitely made it all worth it. And yes, getting to the top is super important. Destination is super important. But it is also the journey that I took for the last 10 years that made me the person I am today, the person who is standing in front of you today. It is that journey during which I kind of created that person. So as I stand here, and as I look back upon my last 10 years of the journey, I do realize that, yes, as I said, standing on top of Everest was super important. If I didn't stand on top of Everest, you wouldn't be inviting me and letting me talk on the stage. So that was important, but the journey was also important, and enjoying the journey was also important. But I also want to take this opportunity and urge each one of you in the audience to kind of find your Everest, to figure out that Everest, to figure out that overarching goal, that overarching theme of your life that gives you that passion, that gives you that drive, that gives you that focus to pursue that goal relentlessly and get through that tough times. And as I said, also remember that once you find your Everest and you go on this journey, it is during this journey that you will transform yourself as well. Right? When I went through this journey, there were a lot of trials and tribulations, lot of challenges, lot of failures. As you already saw, lot of suffering, lot of misery, so many ups and downs. It is through this that you are eventually going to become the person that is going to climb your Everest. So, one thing that I would like to say is, as all of you, students, and you're kind of getting into your careers and thinking about your future, the entire world is your mountain playground. I say, find your Everest, climb your Everest, go change the world, go make everyone proud, and go become the person that you are supposed to become. Thank you so much.